Good morning, beautiful people. I hope you're all working hard and enjoying your online learning. This week, our learning intention is to justify our interpretations of a text, including responses to characters, information, and ideas. Yesterday, we looked at our characters. Today, we're going to focus more on our information and ideas. In our integrated unit, we've been looking at what was happening in England in the 1700s and why they needed to come to Australia. We know the invention of the steam engine led to many people losing their jobs and new factories being created. We know that many people then moved to the cities to find work and they became overcrowded. Because many people couldn't find work, they had to steal to survive, and so there was crime everywhere. We know that these factory owners virtually made slaves of children as they were desperate to help their families, and they were also cheap labour. So today we're going to look at the information and ideas of what was happening in England at the time, about how Elizabeth and Tom were mistreated by the factory owners, being sure to justify our opinions with evidence from the text. We're also going to start looking at some of the unfair punishments given to adults and children if they broke the law. At the mill, Elizabeth and the other children work 15 hours a day, every day of the week. It was very hard and dangerous work. The steam-driven machines kept the rollers of the looms turning day and night, and if Elizabeth fell asleep, she could fall into the machinery. If she couldn't keep up, the strapper would beat her. I want you to close your eyes for a moment and think about some of the jobs you might help out with around your house. Do you have to work on them all day, every day? Were they dangerous? Are you beaten if you do them too slowly? These are some of the words from the text that tell me just how cruel and horrible life was for the people of England, particularly the children at this time. Elizabeth would crawl into bed each night, bruised and exhausted, until the day she learnt that Tom was old enough to be sent to the mill. She knew he wouldn't survive there. Being small meant he would be sent under the rollers to pick off the loose pieces of cotton as they flew past. Elizabeth had done that dangerous job herself and had nearly been killed when her hair caught in the rollers. Again, in this part of the text, we see just how difficult it was for the children to be working in these factories, in this mill. This line here, she knew he wouldn't survive there. A short, simple sentence that the author has included, and I believe that the author is trying to make me feel a certain way here. I already know that Elizabeth feels like she has to protect Tom. I know she worries about him. And by stating that he wouldn't survive because of the dangerous job he would be set, because he was so small, makes me think that Elizabeth is desperate for him not to have to work in the mill. One cold September night, as the other children were going to bed, Elizabeth noticed there was no one in the kitchen. She quickly bundled bread and cheese into a flour sack and crept back to find Tom in the darkened dormitory. He was scared, but she coaxed him to come with her, and with her arm around his shoulders, they tiptoed to the stables. Elizabeth rubbed Millie's neck and whispered a final goodbye. Suddenly, lanterns flickered through the trees and the guards' dogs began to bark. The children climbed an old cypress tree behind the stables and were soon over the orphanage wall and running. And that was how they came to live in the alleyways of London. So here they are in London. We know that the streets are overcrowded. We can see here the absolute desperation of Elizabeth to protect Tom. She knew it was a risk to try and escape the orphanage, but she knew that staying was an even greater risk for him. So there they were, alone, living in the streets with very little food and no money. No home to live in, danger at every corner. Your reading task today is to be a genie. You're going to grant Tom and Elizabeth 3 wishes. What are 3 things they could really use at this point of the story? What might help them in this terrible situation? What will enable them to survive? Be sure you are justifying why Elizabeth and Tom would want these wishes. Take some think time before you start. Be creative. Have a great day of learning, Year 4.